Aloha.
Me in this session. I'm really excited to be here with you all, and like also pretty nervous too, so just gotta get that out there. But I'm excited to kind of cover these topics with you folks today and have a awesome discussion with you all about kind of how you maybe see this in your work and in your own lives. And also really stoked that they had a whole keynote right before this that talked very in depth about Ukuni Kumohana, so we're like ready to go, right? We can hit the ground. All right, awesome. I honestly forgot what was next. So, olegi mai koni kau kuino, hilo mai au, makumuko kiabe. O mauna wa kia mauna wai kuuwai, la ia ko makumu, aloha a kiole kahala. So, aloha nui everyone. My name is Lily Noikohikawa. I am from Hilo on Hawaii Island. I bring into this space Mauna Kea as my mountain source and the Wailuku as my water source. They're on screen with me. These are the sources that grounded me along my own healing journey, and they continue to ground me wherever I go. So it's really important for me to bring them into all the spaces that I'm in. They've helped to ground me as well along my own, as I mentioned, my own healing journey. They continue to teach me as these sources every single day. I'm a person with lived experience with long-term addiction, mental health issues, justice involvement, as well as homelessness. And returning home to Hilo and reconnecting culturally was probably one of the most important things that I ever did in my entire life. Hilo has its own heartbeat, its own energy, and that energy is what saved my life. And I'll kind of share a little bit more along our journey today, and kind of how I see my own healing journey along the lines of Kukunukumohana, as well as one of the other frameworks that I'll share with you all today. Next slide. So I'll quickly go through my organization. So I work for Papalolokahi, which is the Native Line Health Board. I'm a program coordinator for substance use and mental health projects. So Papalolokahi, we are born out of the Native Line Healthcare Improvement Act, which was originally passed by Congress back in the 80s. Our mission is to raise the health status of Native Hawaiians and their families. With this extends to our Kanaka Maoli here in Hawaii, as well as on the continent, not that ever before. Next slide, please. We also oversee the 5 Native Line healthcare systems. There's one on each island. We house the Native Line Healthcare Scholarship, as well as many other departments. If you want to check out our website, it's pretty cool. Next slide, please. I also serve as the project manager for our SAMHSA grant, which is called the Ohana Center of Excellence for Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander. It's the longest title ever. So it's a 5-year project to really envision what behavioral health, culturally responsive behavioral health care can look like for our organization. It focuses on Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders. So we have another team that focuses on the Asian American aspects of that, because putting all of these populations together can be really problematic. But anyways, that's a whole other talk. So we have a lot of culturally focused trainings. They focus on each of the cultures under that Pacifica umbrella. We do technical assistance. We do actual podcasts now. We have all kinds of stuff. You can check out that website too if you're interested. Next slide, please. Okay, so today I'm going to go over, talk a little bit about how we can utilize the Kukunukumohana framework. I'm going to do this through another framework perspective. So I'm going to do this through the lens of Alpha, which is also one of the handouts that you folks have with you today. And this kind of session was really born out of, I was asked by the Oaklani Trust Palama over here.
Where did you put that?
Right there. To do this session as a because we were one of the many grantees out of the work that the organizations and all the other native Hawaiian organizations were doing for Moana. And as I shared with you, the Ihuiana no Moku, the cultural resource guide for harm reduction in native Hawaiian communities, that was one of the products that we kind of created. And the Kuluku Mohana framework was within that, and we looked at that the dimensions through the lens of harm reduction. What could this look like for folks that are on their healing journey, folks that are using substances? How can they continue to engage in culture? There should not be any barriers to culture for anyone, right? Regardless of whether they use substances or not. That's a big point of that toolkit. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to create that avenue for people to have that first point of cultural connection. For me, when I was coming home to heal, I didn't have kupuna. I didn't have connection within cultural spaces, so I didn't have anywhere to go. For our people that are, experiencing a lot of these issues, there can also be a lot of barriers on whether or not you can enter into halal or enter into, some of these other cultural practices about whether if you're using substances, right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a place where people can go to that first connection to ignite that first spark. And so this session was really born out of, we did a training on our toolkit for the Queen's Care Coalition. And as I mentioned in the keynote, the resource guide is huge. It's like 70 plus pages. So the training on it is 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours. And it doesn't even have all the sections in it. But what we did a 2-day training with Queen's Care Coalition, and I was really, I reached back out after a little while, after we were going to do this session, is I wanted to know, what kind of an impact that had. Was Moana something that after training on with the Queen's Care Coalition, were they able to utilize it with the people that they were serving? Because sometimes we do these trainings and then we have no idea whether it worked or not, right? And sometimes I leave the training like, what happened next, right? So really stoked that actually Martha and Pihao of that group were willing to meet with me and talk through how that training impacted them, how they were utilizing the frameworks that we shared within that training. And the two frameworks that stood out to them were the Ahupa'a and Kukuluku Mohana. Both are for reasons that and Martha, feel free to jump in here if you want to, if I'm incorrectly summarizing words, but these were frameworks that could be internalized and could be understood in terms of oneself and how to kind of center oneself in what self-reflection, self-healing, all of those types of things, how they can understand their self in relation to the rest of the world. And it's not like these frameworks necessarily made that connection for them. The connection already existed, but the frameworks helped to strengthen it. Is that wrong? Okay. So what I'm going to try to do today is kind of focus on those two aspects of that training, and then have a little bit of a discussion. Next. So I always start off these trainings with being centered in a Native Hawaiian perspective. Because to me, this is also a very important part. We are starting with people that don't necessarily align with, like, let's say, a Western understanding of the self. Then that's going to put everything else that we're doing for them off, right? We have to understand their cultural perception of self and how they understand themselves in relation to the people around them, in relation to the world around them. From a Kanaka Maoli point of view, this model comes to us from Uncle Mikeke Paulino One. And it centers on a triangle because it shows this balanced and reciprocal relationship between Kanaka as people, Akua as our spiritual powers, and Aina. And so the understanding of self from a Kanaka Maoli perspective is that it's not just about the self, it's about the self in relation to giving to Aina and being fed by Aina. The self in relation to spirituality, giving to spirituality and being fed by spirituality. And similarly from spirituality and Aina, right? Having this reciprocal relationship. And that is what creates Maliola, or an optimal understanding of health. Without that balance, without those reciprocal relationships, everything can get all kind of complicated and stretched in different ways. So when we look at like the influence of colonization and different historical, cultural, intergenerational traumas that have come off of or come down as a result of colonization, we see an imbalance. So we think about like displacement of land, right? Displacement of people from where they are anchored to in their land. That has severed this connection between Kanaka and Aina, or severed or stretched, or however it makes sense to you. And that creates a complete shift, a complete imbalance. And all of that imbalance can lead to health disparities that we see today. Next slide, please. So one of the ways that we look at this is through something called the Ahupua'a model. And this is really grounded in our connection to land and how we have our relationship with land. It was influenced by White Bisons, which is an indigenous organization out of Colorado, by their healing forest model, and Dr. Kiawe Koholokula's social and cultural determinants of health. But what it aims to show is how everything within the Ahupua'a is interconnected, right? And the Ahupua'a runs from the mountain to the sea. Everything within this Ahupua'a, every system, every lo'i, every mala, every lokui'a, everything is connected one way or another, by water, by the aina, by whatever it is. So anything that comes into this system, if one of these systems becomes unhealthy, it impacts the health of all the other systems. So we like to look at this as like, this can be our person, this can be ourselves, this can be our ohana, this can be our community, this can be all of Hawaii, right? Knowing that we are all impacted by whatever comes into our spaces helps to keep us accountable to one another, helps to understand that we are not just caring for ourselves, we're caring for one another in order to care for ourselves. Here on the right-hand side, we have kind of a depiction of what a healthy lo'i, and this is to say like pre-contact. We're transmitting these intergenerational cultural resiliency factors. And so we've embodied them in the ua, in the rain, because as they flow down, they go into every interconnected system. They flow out all the way here. They get evaporated back up and back into the leni and come back down. And here on the healthy side, we see what was transmitted before contact. We see cultural knowledge, aina, cultural practices, mo'opu'auhau, intergenerational wisdom, and there's not an extensive list, obviously. It's on the page. But as it comes down into the waterways, into the soil, it creates these healthy layers that contain values that are fundamental and foundational for our communities. Again, not an exhaustive list, but Lokahi is balance, Maliola are healing, Mana spiritual energy, and Pilina connection. As these start to wash down into the systems, into everything that is connected, it becomes the soil that bears the next generation of our people. If you're familiar with Haloa or some of the different historical aspects of Kalo, and seeing Kalo or Taro in relation to ourselves as a literal root, as a Kalo root, and also our root and our ancestor. Again, that's a whole other talk, but happy to talk about it. So this is the healthy side, right? So this is the optimal side. When we see some of the aspects of cultural, historical, intergenerational trauma, or after the things that come after colonization, we have here on the left side our discrimination and racial trauma, criminalization of Native identity, loss of land, dismantling of Native practices, and we have lifetime traumas, right? Childhood trauma, family history of incarceration. Again, not an exhaustive list, because the range is small. But as these issues start to fall down into the systems, as they fall down into the waterways, into the land, they create layers of pain. And that pain is made up of anger, fear, guilt, and shame. As that starts to wash down into the waterways, into the lo'i, all down into these systems, if we zoom into the lo'i, what we see happening is then we also see our next generation start to puka or emerge out of this, where they're carrying this with them. They start to bring this with them, and sometimes they may not even really know that it's there. We hope that it never even bubbles to the surface, right? But sometimes it does. And when it does, we see it as manifesting symptoms of a lot of these social issues that we see today, or child abuse, addiction, suicidality, mental illness. These are often surface symptoms of a trauma that is much, much deeper, that requires us to look much, much deeper and upstream. And so what's important to also remember about this model is that not only do it's not all EHA. I mean, even though there is EHA, and sometimes the EHA is a lot louder, these protective and cultural factors, these things that keep us strong and healthy and thriving, are also flowing through our systems and always present. But often the EHA gets a lot louder. So what we need to do is to clean the void of a lot of these factors, of a lot of these issues that continue to be passed down generationally, and create more space for these protective and resiliency factors. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so just in case that was a whole lot of information, but a few takeaways for you. The Ahupua'a model itself, and you all have a copy of it. I do a whole training on that, and then we do like all these activities to like personalize it and all these things. So we don't have time for that. But please feel free to draw on it. I usually ask folks to add in things that speak to them. Like what are things that you see in your system? Because what do you see is being passed down from your parents? How do you see it coming into your lo'i? What is the impact on your lo'i and lo'i around you? So maybe your family and families around you, how is that being impacted? What is it that you want to pass on to your next generation or not pass on? So there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of look at that and internalize that and utilize that. And we've actually done a training for one of the adult mental health divisions out on this side, and they actually have the Ahupua'a model in their lobby, which they use with folks that come in and folks that walk in, so that they can see it and see if that resonates with them. Is that something that they can talk about and talk through and utilizing as a tool? This is another model that we really hope is just, if it speaks to you, cool. Use it however it makes sense to you. So it exemplifies interconnectedness, it embodies the cycles of water and land as conduits, and it serves as a framework for collective healing and resilience. Next slide, please. Okay, we might skip this because I don't think we have time. Just think to yourself then. If you were going to think about the Ahupua'a in your own lens, as yourself, as your ohana, as your extended ohana, what would be one risk factor that you see most prevalently in your own life? Or what is one protective factor that you have most accessible to you? Do you want to talk about it for like 2 minutes? Yeah, maybe 2 minutes. Okay, go. Trauma-informed, and I was reading about trauma-informed, and I've been trained on it before, and I realized it's just so much aligned with all of these models and how they work. Okay, so the Ahupua'a model informs the Kukuluku Mahana dimensions, particularly by promoting cultural identity, collective healing through trauma-informed lens. Next slide, please. Okay, so if we were to draw parallels between all of these models, I'll just read them quickly. We can see that all of these models connect through interconnectedness and the flow of healing throughout all. Holistic view of healing and collective healing, cultural identity and self-determination, creating safe environments, addressing the root of trauma, and restoring relationships. This is how all the two models kind of overlap, and how we can see the Pukulu Kumohana actually being utilized or interacting with the Ahupa. Next slide, please. Okay, so I also used my my thing from earlier too. So we're gonna have to think of something else. Okay. So I know that. Okay, so so I know they already said pick one that really resonates with you. So I'll say, you keep that one that really resonates with you. Now pick one that you need to strengthen. And take about 5 minutes and talk amongst yourselves. Maybe pick like a partner or like two partners. Okay, maybe like 3 minutes.
Self-determination and making choices for themselves. So that's how I can fit in that mind for the past couple weeks.
Anybody else?
I can share. I recently completed the community health worker certification through the community health. So for me, we were asked as part of the learning process to identify our own, to develop cultural identity. And I had never really thought of myself as a person in culture, and what would my culture be? So for me, that would be what I need to work on and develop. And for me, I also feel like my tribe was perfect. And this lens actually is very healing for me in terms of how I see myself in relation to others and also in the environment. So thank you.
Woo!
Can't remember the words right now. Okay, over here.
We talked about the different dimensions and